So to help answer those questions and more, well, my next guest wrote a letter to the president urging him to hand over the content of his daily intel briefings to Congress. Here to explain why, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, good to see you. Well, first of all, what do you think of Mark's comments? Because I think Mark's dead on. What do you think?
Well, I think the problem that we all have is that we don't trust the President of the United States to be honest with us. This is the same guy who said, I never referred to ISIS as the JV team when he did. This is the same guy that said it was the Iraqis' decision not to leave troops behind, not mine. This is the same guy that blamed a video 2 weeks after the Benghazi attack that had nothing to do with it. So the letter is written to the president to clear this up. He's thrown the intelligence community under the bus. And if he's right, somebody needs to be fired if they've missed it. And if he's misleading the American people about him checking out as commander-in-chief, I want to know that.
Well, James Clapper, who he said himself admitted that it was an intelligence community failure, which, by the way, we were told that the president got presidential daily briefings every day, right. granular detail about the rise of ISIS. I don't think it's surprising now that the agencies, all these, quote, leaks saying that, in fact, he was given lots of details about ISIS and did nothing. And clearly on Iraq, he knew the consequences if he'd pull out early and not keep intelligence and training forces on the ground. We see what happened.
Well, the question is, would this president shift blame to protect himself? The answer is yes. When he says he did not refer to ISIS as the JV team in January because they're so powerful now, he's trying to basically walk back that statement. At the end of the day, he wanted out of Iraq. The Iraqis were willing to leave troops behind, but he would never give them a number. And now he's thrown the intelligence community under the bus, I believe. But the presidential daily briefings could solve this problem. Let us see what he was being told and make our own independent decision as Congress, who has oversight. I'm worried that our intelligence community is not functioning according to the commander-in-chief, or is it the commander-in-chief not functioning?
Right, so
I don't know. We'll never know until we see the information. President Bush turned over his presidential daily briefings to the 9/11 Commission to make sure history recorded what happened before 9/11. Mr. President, President Obama, turn those daily briefings over so history can adequately record what happened regarding the rise of ISIS. Did you miss it and ignore it, or was it the intelligence community?
Well, the intelligence community is saying that, in fact, the president was warned. He only apparently sat through these meetings. He missed 60% of them. What do you make of that? Isn't that his main job? He played golf more than he sat through intelligence briefings? That's a little frightening.
Whatever you want to say about President Bush, and he made some mistakes, he was intent from the day those buildings crumbled to the day he left to protect this country. He was all over terrorism, trying to keep the war over there so they wouldn't come back here. I can't imagine the commander-in-chief in the times in which we live not listening and asking questions every day about the threats we face. Does he have a television? Does he read the newspaper? Clearly, the rise of ISIS was there to be seen, but on the 60 Minutes program, he shifted blame. That's unfair if it's not true, and if it is true, somebody needs to be fired.
But the president is insisting that ISIS is not Islamic. He's saying, he said Sunday, we are not at war with ISIS. We're bombing them, but we're not at war with them. And Fort Hood is still characterized as workplace violence, and apparently they have an unwillingness to even say what happened in Oklahoma is an act of terrorism. What do you make of that?
I make of a person, the commander-in-chief, our president, not being honest either with himself or the public about the times in which we live. 76% of the American people believe he's being too soft, too weak regarding radical Islam. I bet you if you polled ISIL, 100% would say the same thing. If you polled our enemies, they would say he's weak. If you polled our friends, they would say he's weak. The American people have figured this out. And President Obama constantly says things that make no sense. ISIL's at war with us, my friend.
I think
we should be at war with them.
Listen, I think there will, if this continues, the growth of these terror groups throughout the Middle East and Africa, I think it's definitely going to hit the West. Then we'll have something similar to the 9/11 Commission report. They were at war with us. They were beheading Americans. They said they'd raise their flag, the flag of Islam, in the White House. They said they'd meet us in New York. There won't be any surprise here. The question is, whatever the president knew, we had 4,000 Americans die in Iraq. The surge worked. And he stood by as Ramallah and Tikrit and Fallujah and Mosul and city after city fell, and he didn't lift a finger. He bragged about how he got us out of a war. He didn't keep the troops on the ground for intelligence and training purposes. Is that his fault that Iraq has been lost and ISIS now has this landmass?
Oh, absolutely. It was clear to all of us who go over there for any length of time that we were leaving Iraq in a bad spot. If you pulled everybody out, if you'd left 10,000 behind, ISIS wouldn't be in Baghdad or wouldn't be in Iraq today because we could have stopped them. The Iraqi army would still be intact. Political progress was still being made. I think he has two legacies he jealously guards: Obamacare and ending the war in Iraq. And this political strategy to defeat ISIL is going to fail. It's actually, a military strategy to defeat ISIL is not what we have. We got a military strategy around a campaign promise that I'll never have to go back into Iraq, and he's creating danger to our country by allowing these people to grow and be unchecked. The airstrikes are not going to work, Sean. That alone won't work.
I want to ask you one last question. The Kurds are saying that it's not working. He said no boots on the ground, no shock and awe. Our military experts, former defense secretaries, have all pretty much said the same thing. They're saying to the president, that's not the strategy that's going to win. Do you think that this is directly related to polls that show the American people see ISIS as a clear and present danger, and the pending election, the midterm elections? Do you see a connection?
I think he's reluctant to introduce troops on the ground as an option, which clearly it needs to be. You're never going to destroy ISIL without going in on the ground in Syria and Iraq to get them out, and America has to be part of that force, not the only part, but part of that force. I really believe he's worried more about not being George W. Bush than protecting the country from a growing threat, that he will never, ever, no matter what anybody tells him, introduce forces into Syria and Iraq that are necessary to protect us. He is trying to run out the clock. He's trying to do as much as possible and as little as possible not to have to go in on the ground, and he's wanting to get out of the job and leave this mess to the next president, and that breaks my heart for those who fought and died in Iraq, and shame on you, Mr. President, for putting the country in such a spot.
All right, Senator, strong words. Appreciate you being with us. Coming up.